Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking for you this evening. The stock market shakes off its early weakness, ending the day on a firm footing. Auto stocks helping the Sensex and the Nifty gain traction. Mid-cap struggle to keep up. The markets gain for the third week in a row, end the week over 1% higher.
We don't have any ideological hang-ups on whether we import 1 million from X, Y or Z.
Petroleum Minister Hardeep Puri says India's imports of Russian oil have gone up from barely 1% in FY 2022 to about 30% as of March this year. Defends India's stance to buy oil from Russia despite a near global call for a boycott. Says Europe would have been in a much deeper recession if there was no Russian oil. Shares of Adani Transmission and Adani Total Gas tumble after the MSCI drops them from its India index as part of its quarterly review. Max Healthcare, Sona BLW and Hindustan Aeronautics have been added to the index. The changes will kick in from the 31st of May. Cipla reports a mixed set of numbers for Q4. Revenue beats estimates with a 9% growth. Margins are slightly below expectations. A one-time exceptional loss of more than 180 crore rupees hits the drug maker's bottom line. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman meets IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva on the sidelines of the G7 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting in Japan. The Ukraine-Russia war, global economic growth and inflation top of the agenda. Companies that leased aircraft to Go First argue they should be allowed to repossess their property. Tell the NCLAT that the insolvency resolution professional cannot take charge of third-party assets under the insolvency process. Add they had terminated lease agreements before the moratorium was granted. The airline says nothing will survive in Go First if the aircraft are repossessed. Twitter boss Elon Musk says he's hired a new CEO. Tweets that she will start at the company in around 6 weeks. Adds he will transition to the role of executive chairman and chief technology officer. Reports suggest Linda Yaccarino, who heads advertising at NBC Universal, could be the chosen one. Delhi police files a status report on the sexual harassment allegations against Wrestling Federation chief Brij Bhushan Singh. Says Singh's statement has been recorded. A special investigative team, which includes 4 women police officers, have been formed. Wrestlers raise 6 lakh rupees as they resort to crowdfunding to continue their protest. The Islamabad High Court grants a 2-week bail to former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan in the Al-Qadir Trust case. During the hearing, Khan alleges he was tortured by prison authorities. The Supreme Court termed his arrest earlier this week as illegal. Russia's defense ministry denies reports that Ukrainian forces have recaptured ground in the eastern city of Bakhmut. Says the military situation in the area is under control. The UK becomes the first country to say it will supply Ukraine with long-range cruise missiles. Well, the Lal Street opened on a sluggish note, but that was short-lived as we saw a strong showing by auto stocks, which sent the Sensex and the Nifty into positive territory. Now, both the indices ending with modest gains for the day. The mid-cap index, however, failed to find traction, and that index closed the day nearly 0.5% lower. Today's pullback has also meant that key indices have ended the week comfortably in the green. The Sensex and the Nifty up by about 1%. This will make it the third week in a row that our markets have gained ground. Well, Surbhi joining us now with a breakdown of the day's trading action. Surbhi, we're now on to 3 weeks of gains, and it's overall been a good week for our markets.
Well, not a bad end to the week, and don't go by just the Nifty level, because if you look at that, you'd probably believe nothing happened in the market today. That's not quite true, because we had a very solid recovery, almost 150 points from the opening low, leading the Nifty to a close above the 18,300 level. The only caveat is a mid-cap underperformance. Today, not such a great day for mid-caps. That index was down just about 0.4%. So what led to this pullback, this recovery? Banks, and a lot of the frontline names were participating. The Bank Nifty was one of the strongest indexes in the market, but it had good company in the form of autos. Autos were revved up, and how? Thanks to the Eicher Motors numbers. Blowout performance from Eicher in the fourth quarter. Strong volumes, margins moving higher thanks to all the price hikes that they have undertaken. That stock was up almost 6-7%. It kind of took all its peers along with it. It's a good day for Hero Moto. Tata Motors was up and about ahead of its earnings as well. So pretty solid over there. The subdued part of the market in terms of sectors was metals. And we know that global prices are to be blamed for this. Overnight, there was a slump in copper prices. Copper is at multi-month lows, and that was rubbing off on some of the stocks like Hindalco, for instance, down almost 4%. On mid-caps, yes, at the index level, as I mentioned, it was slightly disappointing, but individual names basis on earnings, let's say an Intellect Design Arena or a Sensor Technology, some of these stocks actually did fairly well for themselves. Now, for the week, the market has managed to put up about 1.5% gain on the Nifty. The index, by the way, is just around 3% away from the all-time highs. So what will set the tone for next week? Well, definitely the Karnataka election outcome for one, and politics in the US as well, with a lot of talk around this debt ceiling. And to add to it, the last of the big results that we'll get as we come back. We will have numbers from Colgate, from Tata Motors, from State Bank of India later in the week. And that should give some fresh impetus perhaps to the bulls if these factors go in their favor.
Right. So, Ruby, many thanks for joining us. That was a wrap of the market action for today, for the week, and more importantly, for the week ahead as well. Moving on, crude oil prices continue to slide as another build-up in US inventories. Fears of a debt default and China's patchy economic recovery weigh on sentiment. Prices currently on track for a fourth consecutive weekly loss. This will be the longest weekly losing streak for crude since November of 2021. Petroleum Minister Hardeep Puri has said that India's import of Russian oil has gone up from barely 1% to about 30% currently. Speaking at the India Business Leader Awards last evening, the minister defended India's position to buy oil from Russia despite a near global call for a boycott. He said that Europe would have been in a much deeper recession if there was no Russian oil. Take a look.
You need to ensure availability of energy. You need to ensure affordability of energy and sustainability, the trilemmas. So how did we handle it? Very different from the way the European economies handled it, very different from how the others handled it. Shireen, India's imports of crude from the Russian Federation when the financial year ended 31st March 2022 was 0.2%. Today, I don't have the latest figures, it could be as large as 30% of our imports coming from there.
Given the fact that Russia finds itself increasingly more and more isolated, will your friends have the patience in future? They understand it now, but will they have the patience in future, especially if they see this trajectory moving higher and higher?
I wouldn't worry too much about that. Today, countries will fend for themselves. I don't think there's any popularity contest going out on there as to who has more admirers. If India didn't buy that 30% of our requirement from the Russians, if we had to buy it from the Saudis and the UAE, and Russian oil was not on the market, you know what the price of oil today would be? So instead of one large European economy which is facing recession, it would have been in deep recession today.
Well, that is the Oil and Gas Minister Hardeep Puri. Now, shares of Adani Transmission and Adani Total Gas slumping in trade today. This after the MSCI dropped them from its India index as part of its quarterly review. The changes will kick in from the 31st of May. Vivek is standing by with the details. Vivek, take us through which companies have now been included as part of the MSCI index.
Well, absolutely. You know, it's a much anticipated event. So the May index review results are out. So MSCI has given out the list of inclusions as well as exclusions. Now, the index that we are tracking right now is the MSCI standard index, which is where the maximum amount of flows happen and which is where the maximum impact happens in terms of stock-specific action as well. Now, a lot of the components that have been included into this particular index are largely along expected lines, with a couple of surprises too that have been thrown in. So first, Max Healthcare is an inclusion into this particular index, likely flows of over $295 million over here. Sona BLW Precision, now this is a clear surprise. None of the quant analysts who actually track the MSCI very closely, they didn't have it in the list of potential candidates that could be into the MSCI standard index. Also, Hindustan Aeronautics, this was expected to make the cut, and it has made the cut, around $195 million worth of inflows coming into this particular name. On the other hand, Indus Tower is the stock along expected lines that is being excluded from the index. A couple of other stocks that are in focus, key among them being Kotak Mahindra Bank. The stock is going to see a major weight up in the MSCI Standard Index, and on the account of that, expect flows of a little over $800 million into this particular counter. Indigo as well as Zomato will see some inflows coming in here. All of the estimates that we have taken are from Nuvama Alternative Research. Some of the other stocks that will remain in focus on the back of changes in MSCI Small Cap Index are names like KFin Tech, KNH Technologies, Bikaji Foods, Fusion Microfinance, and the stocks that will be deleted from the MSCI Small Cap Index are Polycab, Gillette, Aztec Life Sciences, and Dilip Bilcon. These names are the ones that are high impact. There are a whole host of other names that are included as well as excluded from the MSCI Small Cap Index as well.
All right, Vivek, many thanks for joining us. Well, here's the latest in the Go First saga. The airline's lessors, that's SMBC Aviation and SFV Aircraft Holdings, have told the NCLAT that Go First has no right on their planes as the lease agreements were already terminated prior to the moratorium. Go First, in its response, said that the airline cannot resume operations without these aircraft. The court has not issued any direction so far. It has deferred the hearing to the 15th of May. Ashmit joins us now with more. Ashmit, the lessors making it clear that they want repossession, that the termination agreements that they had already inked had come into play ahead of the moratorium. So this is going to be a tricky situation for Go.
Indeed, in fact, the lessors not only have they said that the termination of the lease happened prior to the grant of moratorium, they're also saying that even before the moratorium had begun, they had taken over possession of the aircraft. That is a submission that lessors made today before the NCLAT, that they were in possession until that was undone by the IRP. We'll come to that in just a bit. The second key argument that the lessors put forth before the NCLAT is that the civil aviation rules or CAR here in India do not allow an airline to fly a plane where the lease has been terminated. So given that they had terminated the lease, these aircraft are anyways not fit to fly under civil aviation rules.
Well, we'll snap that link with Ashmit, but essentially the lessors making it clear that they would like repossession. They believe that the NCLT order is not in conformance with the civil aviation rules, and let's see how this matter now proceeds. Now, American aircraft manufacturer Boeing has said that the Go First insolvency process is a sad incident for all parties involved, be it the airline or the lessor. Salil Gupta, the president of Boeing India, also told my colleague Shivani Bajaj that they do not have any visibility of the Jet Airways comeback yet. Take a look.
We're all aware of the NCLT insolvency filing by Go Air. That's always sad for the airline, for the employees, for all of the stakeholders, and of course for the creditors and for the lessors who have continued to work with them. The reality is that progress is never a straight line. Right, the trend line macro for India is continued growth, and we have yet to see what will happen with Go Air. We know that they've targeted coming back at some point into operation, and it's too early to say how all of that is going to play out. But what everyone is focused on is trying to make sure that this market is liquid in terms of how assets are handled, airplane assets in this market, because that's going to drive the best cost structure for the airline customers.
Another airline that is in news right now is the Jet Airways, and there are still troubles there. But is Boeing looking to, what is the kind of status that your association with Jet Airways is going on?
Well, of course, Jet Airways was a Boeing customer previously to its filing a few years ago, and we hope it will be a Boeing customer in the future. We're, of course, always talking to all of our customers, including Jet, about how we can meet their needs as they go forward. In terms of the timing of their operation and their comeback, we really don't have any better perspective than you would. It's best to talk to them about that.
Well, that is Salil Gupta there of Boeing, and yes, no clarity yet as far as the Jet Airways relaunch is concerned. Looks increasingly uncertain. The centre has taken action against 5 e-commerce platforms, including Amazon and Flipkart, for selling car seatbelt alarm stopper clips. Now, the Central Consumer Protection Authority has banned the sale of these clips for violating the Consumer Protection Act and compromising lives. 13,118 listings of car seat belt alarm stopper clips have been delisted from these platforms following the order. The Supreme Court has expressed its displeasure over the poor implementation of the POSH Act, the law that deals with sexual harassment of women at workplaces. Even a decade after its enactment, the court has directed the union government to ensure that provisions of the act are strictly implemented. The court has also asked that employees of central government organizations and institutions be made familiar with the provisions of the act. The Supreme Court has also heard SEBI's plea for a 6-month extension to complete its probe into Hindenburg's allegations against the Adani Group. The apex court observed that it would be unfair to say whether there has been a regulatory failure in the matter without reading the expert committee's report. While the court observed that a 6-month extension may not be appropriate, it said it will decide on the period of extension on the 15th of May. So that is when the matter will be taken up by the Supreme Court again. In earnings, pharma giant Cipla reporting a mixed bag for Q4, revenue ahead of estimates, margins a slight miss. However, a one-time exceptional loss of more than 180 crore rupees has impacted the company's bottom line. Ekta standing by with the fine print. Ekta.
Well, for Cipla this quarter, the revenue and the margins were largely in line with estimates. The revenue growth was up around 9% Street was anticipating around an 8% growth. The margins came in at around 20.5%. The Street was anticipating around 21%. And the profit, however, missed expectations simply because there was an outflow of around 180 odd crores. Plus, there was a higher tax expense, which was to the tune of over 200 odd crores this quarter versus around 70 crores on a year-on-year basis. Now, in terms of the US sales, it came in at over $200 million. It was aided by key drugs such as Revlimid generic, the cancer drug, but nonetheless, it was at the higher end of the estimates and versus around $195 million that they did in the previous quarter. The India business did well as well. So the India business was up around 16% on an adjusted basis for COVID-19 drugs. Now, going forward, the company is guiding for around $195 to $200 million in terms of a quarterly US run rate for their US sales in the coming quarters. And in terms of the margins, they are also guiding for around 23 to 24% in FY24. In terms of key drugs, Advair generic, which is an inhaler drug, they have filed it from the Indore facility, which has received some observations from the US FDA. So they are currently looking to resolve those observations. And separately, a Brixon generic, which is a cancer drug, is filed from the Goa plant. The company has indicated that they would be looking to probably transfer the filing to another facility as well.
All right, Ekta, that's Cipla's numbers for you. Thanks very much for joining us. Up next, Twitter boss Elon Musk says he's hired a new CEO, tweets that Social media giant Twitter will have a new CEO in 6 weeks. Elon Musk has announced that he's hired a new CEO to lead the company. However, he has not officially announced a name yet. Musk will transition to the role of Chief Technology Officer, along with being the executive chair, as per a Wall Street Journal report. Now, the WSJ suggests that Linda Yaccarino, the head of advertising at NBC Universal, is being considered to be a top candidate for the position. So what are the challenges the new CEO could face? NBC gets us this report.
Elon Musk announced he has appointed a new CEO for Twitter and his parent company X, saying she will start in around 6 weeks. The New York Times and Wall Street Journal, which cite anonymous sources with knowledge of the matter, report that NBC Universal's head of advertising, Linda Yaccarino, is in talks for the position. CNBC has reached out for comment to NBC Universal, which is CNBC's parent company. Musk told the BBC in April the current CEO is technically his dog, Floki.
Okay. That explains a lot of the decision-making that's been taking place. You know, what I wonder about this new CEO is how much power she is going to have to change some of the original changes that Elon Musk has introduced over the last 6 months or so. I was reading somewhere that he cut 90% of the workforce already. He's introduced this Twitter Blue subscription, removed away legacy blue ticks, and it makes for a very different atmosphere. You know me, I traditionally have used and leaned on Twitter quite a lot, but it definitely feels like there is a different vibe on the platform these days because I think a lot of people feel empowered to say whatever they want, whenever they want, and it can be a bit abrasive at times.
Well, who will it be? It's definitely a woman, and that's what Musk has tweeted, but who will it be is the big question. Now, the Delhi police has formed a special investigation team to investigate allegations against the WFI president, Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. In a report, the police said that Singh's statement has been recorded and certain documents were also demanded. However, he's denied the allegations that were levelled against him. The Islamabad High Court has granted 2 weeks bail to former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan in the Al-Qadir Trust case. During the hearing, Khan alleged he was tortured by prison authorities. The Supreme Court has termed his arrest earlier this week as illegal. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister has said that Ukrainian forces have advanced about 2 kilometers into Bakhmut. This after Russia's defense ministry denied reports that Ukrainian forces had recaptured grounds in the city. The Russian ministry claims the military situation is under control. Meanwhile, the UK has become the first country to say that it will supply Ukraine with long-range cruise missiles. Well, corporate captains under one roof at the India Business Leader Awards last evening as we honour the Best of India Inc. Tata Steel's TV Narendran won the Outstanding Business Leader of the Year. He said his endeavour at the company would be to leave behind an organisation that's financially and culturally future-ready.
And has made his way to the post of Managing Director in 2013.
Infosys was awarded the Outstanding Company of the Year. CEO Salil Parekh received the award on the company's behalf. Parekh, who's been the CEO and MD of Infosys since January of 2018, and last year he was reappointed for another 5-year term. Veteran industrialist and TVS Motors Chairman Venu Srinivasan was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award for his contribution to the growth of the India story, specifically the India manufacturing and export story. Speaking at the event, India Inc. stalwart said that the rise of artificial intelligence is likely to be the next big disruptor. Industry stalwarts also emphasise on the push for better bureaucracy and infrastructure facilities.
Well, not as much as people expect. I think there's a lot of concern about the bureaucracy, and there's a lot of concern about the quality of the infrastructure. So we are losing a lot of business to countries like Bangladesh, for instance.
There is again a lot of talk that we are on the cusp of the next disruption, and this disruption is going to be driven and led by AI. How do you see that?
It will be led. Huge investments are going into it. And we should not underestimate its application.
The focus is, as we look ahead, there's enormous attention on generative AI. There's a lot of work going on automation, on cost, on efficiency with clients. So we'll continue to focus on that. Open source generative AI platforms. We are working with 2 of them where we are putting all of our software development tools onto the platform, which then creates further efficiency and benefits for our developers. So that's a huge impact we'll start to see in productivity.
It's been a good period of last 1 year where we've seen good credit growth. We've seen corporates being very conservative and delevered. So for bankers, to my mind, the risk profile is completely changed. Whether it's the individual or the corporate, there's much more conservatism in borrowing. So that is clearly something that is playing out well. The second is, I think, with all the PLI and the infra push from the government, we are seeing corporates really looking at expansions.
I think it's still a bit volatile out there. Even if you look at the last week, you had China softening last week. This week it started with iron ore prices, coal prices and steel prices going up a bit. Too early to say, but I think, if you look at the PMI in China for services, it's going up month on month. On manufacturing, it's a bit down. So it's too early to predict, but we are, I think, in for some volatility, but I think the fundamentals in some places are still quite strong.
And before we wrap, Alia Bhatt won the Entertainment Leader of the Year at the 18th edition of the India Business Leader Awards. And speaking to CNBC-TV18's Yash Jain, she revealed her desire to explore comedy as a genre.
What I want to understand from you is that you've practically, whatever genre I can imagine, you performed that and performed it with absolute grace. Is there something that you wanted to do always and you haven't been able to do so far? And does that happen in 2023?
Oh, does it happen in 2023? Not maybe yet, but I think I've always wanted to do an out-and-out comedy because I truly believe I'm very funny. I would like to say that about myself. I don't know about everybody else. And I don't think it's very easy to do comedy. So I think it's a very big challenge, and I that's kind of the energy that I'm putting out there in the universe, and I want to do an out-and-out comedy.
Okay, one last question. We've sort of seen the rise of regional cinema, right? So many new faces, so many new directors coming in. Does that sort of give Bollywood as an industry a challenge to come back? And how would that play out in the next couple of years, according to you?
Where did we go that we have to come back from anywhere? Number one. Number two, it's the Indian film industry. Let's look at it in that way. Today we're here for, to honor leaders across the country. And we should also look at the entertainment industry as a whole and call that the Indian film industry. And I think including all the various languages in the country will only give each and every language more of an impetus, more of an excitement, more of that competition, and more of that inspiration to do better, to think newer, and to entertain and unite the country through entertainment. That's the most important thing, and bring people to the theatres, give them a good laugh, give them a good cry also, just entertain them, because that's our job.
That's so gracefully answered. Thank you so much for taking our questions. Pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.
Well, that is Alia Bhatt. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business 360. Thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV18, our Friday favorite. The Editors Roundtable is up next.